What if I told you that fighting 2 watchdogs can actually be easier than fighting just 1? With just a few crystal darts, you can stun and short-circuit the Erdtree Burial watchdogs, causing them to attack anything around them. This sort of mind control effect lasts for 30 seconds, which is more than enough time for them to kill anything else in the room. This effect also builds up on the smaller imps, but they have to have enough health to withstand a few darts. Catacomb dungeons are all throughout Elden Ring, and this tip makes so many of them way easier. So why do crystal darts have this effect then? Well, to me, it seems like crystals were once a part of the watchdog's creation. A glintstone is embedded in the watchdog's staff, for example, but more than that, the crystal dart description reads, "Long ago, it is said that a golem crafter employed a similar crystal tool." I think we'll go deeper into this in a lore episode. I recommended making crystal darts for your playthrough when the game first came out. They're quite powerful and they're easy to make, but it always bothered me then how so many humanoid enemies have this habit of dodging them. Elden Ring's enemies do quite a lot of input reading, I'm sure you're familiar with this, but the same goes for most sorceries as well. But did you know that there's an entire class of sorcery that specifically does not trigger enemy dodges? These are the Night Sorceries. Ambush Shard, Night Shard, Night Comet. These are excellent against NPC invaders or just bosses like Millennia, who literally won't see this coming, but they'll dodge everything else. These Night Sorceries do a little less damage than their glintstone counterparts, but actually being able to hit your enemy makes these spells pretty damn worth it sometimes. Night Sorceries are designed to be assassination spells, which gives them a really nice piece of gameplay flavor since enemies can't dodge them. I'm glad they have that. But speaking of assassination, people commonly underestimate how useful crouch is in this game. Of course, it lets you sneak up on enemies. And if you hit an unaware enemy, then you'll do like 25% extra damage on your first hit. But beyond that, crouch attacks specifically can be really powerful, even if you use them mid-combat. This is because crouch R1 attacks have you perform the same animation as your rolling R1 attacks. So if you want access to your rolling attack on demand, then remember, you can just input L3 and R1 to bring it out quickly at any time. And this attack is especially great on certain weapon classes. It can compensate for the weaknesses that they have in their traditional movesets. Halberds, for example, are typically lacking a fast horizontal swing, but your crouch R1 gives you quick access to one. As another example, colossal swords, like the Guts Greatsword, only have horizontal swings, which is a bit of a letdown, but your crouched R1 gives you access to an insanely fast and long-ranged poke attack. Alternatively, if you're dual-wielding, you can even try crouched L1 attacks, so just consider weaving these into your playstyle if you aren't already. It can completely change the viability of certain weapons. Another thing a lot of players don't know about are weapon feints, which are actions that you can only perform with rapiers and curved swords. If you tap the dodge button while you're holding a heavy attack, you'll cancel the heavy attack while stepping backwards and attacking at the same time, which allows you to maneuver for distance and deal damage at the same time. This backstep attack has been around since Dark Souls, and it didn't get much play in Dark Souls either, really. But in Elden Ring, I think there's one exception that makes this attack really good, and that's the Frozen Needle Rapier. This rapier is really cool. Its R2 and its charged R2 attack is unique in that it shoots a little icicle at your opponent, dealing damage and frostbite without even costing you FP. When this is really great, however, is when you use this R2 while feinting. The icicle attack doesn't have a huge range, so you can feint at a sort of middle distance and actually make use of the backstep in kiting enemies around, which is a really awesome playstyle, and I wish Elden Ring had more techniques like this. These are the sort of little combat intricacies that I love making builds out of, and I have another really good tip that spellcasters will appreciate. So, you would have noticed that spells have a set cast time, right? Sorceries like Carrion Slicer have a wind-up before you attack, as do incantations like Stone of Grunk. However, one really cool thing is you can make a lot of these spells come out a lot faster if you combo them with other spells and attacks. For example, you can remove the wind-up on Carrion Slicer if you cast it right after a regular melee attack, or cast it right after casting a different spell. Here's a comparison. As for incantations, Magma Breath comes out way faster if you use Catch Flame right before it, which actually goes a really long way to making Magma Breath a viable spell. There are a ton of other spells that work this way, and while the inputs can be a little bit tricky with the D-pad, it's a really fun high skill cap thing that you can do to deepen the gameplay of your spellcaster. There are a lot of spells that combo in this way. I'm gonna write my ones that I know in a pinned comment down below, so reply to that with your own if you know of any that I've missed. Now, doing this makes spellcasting a bit more of a high skill cap thing, but if you want to make spellcasting less complicated, well, I have just the thing for you. Defeat Radahn and progress below Limgrave here to find the Mimic-tier ashes in Nokron. Everyone knows this summon is powerful at this point. How could it not be? It's just a copy of everything on your character at the point it is summoned, even your talismans. And speaking of talismans, there's a talisman in the game called Shabriri's Woe, which you can find here in the Frenzied Village. When it's equipped, this talisman forces enemies to focus their attacks on you to the point that they'll actually ignore your summons completely. Usually this kind of just makes the game more dangerous for you, especially during co-op, but one clever thing that you can do with this talisman is to have it equipped and then summon your Mimic-tier, and then take Shabriri's Woe off your character. So since your Mimic-tier was summoned with this talisman equipped, it will now take all of the enemy aggro, leaving you free to cast ranged attacks with complete impunity. This is a really good way to help increase the viability of bow builds, for example, but it's also a great way to make sorcery completely broken, since sorcery is very powerful. You could even go a step further with this and give your Mimic a great shield before you unequip it yourself, so if you really want them to tank for you, then this is what you do. Of course, all of you know about armor alteration at this point, but there are 3 surprising facts about armor alteration that I think a lot of people might have missed. First, altering a piece of armor affects its stats. In all cases that I could find, altered versions of armor offer less resistances, but are a lower weight as well. So if you're just shy of having the right equip load, consider altering a few pieces of armor. Fashion is important, yes, but not if it means fat rolling. Next, in some cases, altering your armor can give it special properties or take them away. The altered Duelist Cloak, for example, reveals its snakes, which are this reviled symbol that makes enemies focus their attacks on you, as if you were wearing the Shabriri's Woe talisman that I mentioned before. As another example, altering the Black Knife chest piece removes its concealing veil, which naturally also removes its stealth-enhancing capabilities. If you have any other examples like this, let me know in the comments. And finally, and most importantly for me, a lot of altered armor sets have different lore descriptions. The altered Land of Reeds armor, for example, tells you more about the actual Land of Reeds, which is locked in a miserable civil war, during which time it has remained alienated from the cultures of its neighbors. As another example, the altered version of Loretta's Royal Knight armor has a different description that describes her endeavors after she stopped being a Carrion Knight, and fittingly, the altered armor set has the Carrion colors removed. So yes, it makes sense that this armor with them removed would describe a different point in this knight's life. There are a ton of altered armor sets that work this way, and I just think this is such an amazing little detail for the devs to have included. But one thing that I kind of wish that they didn't include are these chariots. They suck. That said, the difficulty that you have getting past these chariots kind of makes destroying them feel even better. And if you do manage to destroy them, you get really good rewards. The first chariot you can encounter is behind a stone sword door in the Fringe Folk hero's grave, back where you started the game. So let's destroy it. To do this, carefully make your way past the chariot, dropping down at pretty much every ledge that you see until you end up at a poison swamp. Then take the elevator back up. Here you'll have a line of fire to these giant pots that hang above the roof, hidden in the shadows, and when they drop they explode in blue flame. So line up a shot, wait for the chariot to bump into the wall below you, and that is your trigger to fire. You get 3 attempts at this, there are 3 pots, and when you do drop it, it explodes the chariot, giving you the Erd-tree great bow in return. This bow does extra damage with holy infused arrows, and it scales with faith as well. The next set of chariots are in the Oritza hero's grave. Here there's a section with 2 chariots, and we need to destroy these 2. So to do that we need to introduce a 3rd chariot into the mix. To do this, run down to the point right before the locked door where a 3rd chariot spawns and comes towards you. Use this corpse on the edge as a guide to drop down further to some rafters. Continue further down in this direction until you find another chariot ramp. At this point you can go further up or down the ramp. Both will lead you to this same pillar of imp statues that breathe fire. Make sure you hit it once, just once, to send it upwards. This pillar also includes the Rosus statue that summons the chariots, and this will send a chariot spawn further up to crash. So head back up, die if you need to, and watch them crash. You'll receive the Tree Sentinel armor set and the Holy Ground Ash of War for your efforts. In Gelmir Hero's Grave, you can't destroy the riderless chariot, but you can become its rider. To do this, you jump down into the gap. Make sure you jump into this corner. Here you'll land on the rafters, and from these rafters you can jump down onto the riderless chariot. But before you do that, go inside the window to loot the Gelmir set and kill the Bloodhound. That's 2 rare armor sets already, which is great. Then go back to the rafters and drop down onto the riderless chariot. This way you'll go even further down into the lava and you'll finish the dungeon as a reward. Alternatively though, you can backstep down through this lava or quick step through, but that's kind of a lot less fun. For number 9, did you know that weather can affect your damage? If it's raining, you'll do around 10% less fire damage, but your lightning damage will be increased by 10%. In my testing, it was around 10%, and these effects even applied to enemies that were undercover from the rain. So I guess that suggests that this effect is applied to everything in an area, not just every enemy that's wet per se. This rain effect is something you should really keep in mind if you're doing duels at the main academy gate in Raya Lucaria. This is where people do duels, by the way. It seems to rain really often in Leonia, and lightning builds will inherently be at an advantage here, I guess, while fire builds will be at a disadvantage. Lastly, let's talk about buff stacking. That's a great way to get an advantage, sort of regardless of your build as well. So, disregarding talisman and armor buffs, which are permanent, there are different categories of temporary buffs in Elden Ring, and you can only have 1 temporary buff active from each category. There are weapon buffs, shield buffs, body buffs, aura buffs, health regen buffs, and stamina regen buffs. And in addition to these, there are some special buffs that don't follow any of these rules, so keep those in mind. That's Holy Ground and Terra Magica, for example. Now, activating as many temporary buffs as you can is a huge way to unlock the potential of your character. So here are the buffs that I've found that basically work on every character. To start, you can activate health and stamina regen buffs just with your Flask of Wondrous Physic. You just need the Crimson Burst tier and the Green Burst tier. These tiers are located here and here. Next, an easy way to get access to an aura buff is the Golden Vow Ash of War, which is located here. This gives you 15% extra damage and 15% damage negation as well, and you can just put this on a light dagger, you can activate it, and then switch back to your main weapon. That's incredible. As for body buffs, the Blackguard sells infinite boiled crab here, and then here, which gives you 20% extra physical resistance. And as for weapon and shield buffs, these kind of do depend on your build. If your armaments can be infused, you should absolutely be trying to use something from this list. Before I go, I want to give a huge shout out to Parrygod, who edited this video. The water cooling loop in my PC burst apart the other morning, and I've spent the last few days getting a new PC and repairing the old one, so I really want to thank him for helping me to edit during this time, and editing at some other times as well. He's an amazing editor, and he's fantastic at getting cinematic footage, way better than what I can get, so I have to thank him for that, and he has an incredible channel as well. He's been doing these really amazing cinematic Half-Life short animations, which are fantastic. Please go and check them out. And also before I go, I want to let you know that I'm doing a sale on my displate designs. For this week only, they're all 20% off, but if you check out with more than 4 of the designs in your cart, then they're all 30% off. This would be a great opportunity to get 4 small displays, if you like all of the designs I have on my store. I'm really proud of these designs, and they're all inspired by the games I talk about on this channel, so check them out if you're looking for some room decoration. But thank you, as always, for watching, and I'll see you next time.